Hello, I'm Miriam Wugmeister from Morrison Foerster. I'm a partner in our New York office and the head of the firm's privacy and data security practice. Today we're going to talk about trends in privacy and data security around the world. As you'll see on the attached map, privacy laws are all over the world. They're not just in Europe and not just in the US, but there are many countries in Asia and Latin America which also have privacy laws. So today we're just going to quickly review some of the approaches based on region and some of the trends that we see in different regions. First, let's talk about the US. The US has a sectoral approach to data protection and privacy, focusing on those areas that the US government has determined to be the most risky. We do not have an omnibus law, but we do have many laws that deal with privacy and data security. We have laws specifically for financial institutions and for handling of financial information, such as the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act and the Fair Credit Reporting Act. We have specific laws that are aimed at hospitals and healthcare providers that deal with health information, such as HIPAA, or there are several states that also have specific healthcare laws. We have specific laws aimed at protecting children. The Children's Online Privacy Protection Act is one federal example. We also have special laws at the federal level relating to identity theft and crimes and fraud relating to the use of computers. In addition to federal laws, which apply to all 50 states, we also have specific state laws. And in fact, some of the most innovative and cutting-edge laws regarding privacy and data security in the US are done at the state level. So we have laws at the state level that deal specifically with obligations for protecting personal information that are security focused. We have special laws that deal with social security numbers, how social security numbers can be used and disclosed. We have all the breach notification laws, which are all at the state level. Thus, if you are working in the US from a privacy and data security perspective, you need to check not only the federal law, but also the state laws in which you're operating. The US trends are that enforcement is increasing. We're seeing the FTC being more and more active. We're seeing the state attorney generals being more and more active. Regulators are imposing larger fines. The fines are up to $1 million now, so they're really quite significant compared to other regions. We are also seeing an increase in class actions. There is a possibility, although it's not likely to be in the next several months, that there could be a data protection law passed at the federal level. It's been discussed for several years, but it may actually happen in the next year or so. And it is likely that we will see more state laws. We see several states, California in particular, passing new laws or strengthening the laws that are already on the books with respect to data security and breach in particular, and we expect to see that continuing. In the EU, there's really quite a different approach to privacy. Privacy is considered a fundamental right. There has been an EU directive since 1995, and that directive is not generally directly applicable to the EU member states. What a directive does is it requires each member state to adopt a law that has the minimum requirements that are in the directive. What that means then is you have 27 separate laws. So if you're operating in the EU, you can't just look at the EU directive, you have to look at the laws of each of the member states that are relevant to you. Historically, the rules on the books are quite strict, but enforcement has been fairly minimal. There are a few exceptions, and as we'll talk about in a minute, enforcement is definitely increasing in certain countries. There are special rules in the EU for sensitive data. So sensitive information, in addition to the normal protections that are required for all personal information, sensitive information such as political opinion or racial or ethnic origin, membership in a trade union, information about sex life, all have to get special protections, heightened special protections. The European rules also include limitations on cross-border transfers. So if you are transferring information from a European country, an EU member state, to a country outside of the EU, generally speaking, you have to put in special rules and take special precautions in order to allow that information to be shared outside of the EU. When we talk about a transfer, what we really mean is access. This is one of the key misconceptions when people just read the European member state laws. If you have data sitting in a database in Europe and you allow somebody in the US to access that information, that is a transfer and the cross-border rules will apply. Trends that we're seeing in the EU is, as I mentioned, an increase in enforcement and inquiries in certain countries. So, for example, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in France, we're seeing the data protection authorities being much more active, doing things more like audits, going to companies and asking follow-up questions, bringing enforcement actions, and levying fines. So there definitely is an increase in enforcement in those countries, as well as some of the Eastern European countries, such as Poland and Hungary and some of the other smaller Eastern European countries. We also are seeing actions by competitors and consumer groups. So companies are being sued by their competitors for using information in a way that's inconsistent with the promises that they've made to consumers. There is a new draft regulation that has been proposed by the EU. If that goes into effect, if it is agreed to, and if it goes into effect, it will come into force at the earliest in 2017. There are significant changes in that regulation. If it does go into force, it will have a significant effect on companies operating in Europe. There will be breach notification in the regulation, and that we definitely expect to see more countries adopting breach notification obligations. And the other interesting thing about the regulation is that it does have an extraterritorial effect, meaning companies outside of the EU that target EU citizens will be covered by the new regulation if it is adopted as it's currently drafted. So there's a lot happening in the EU, and you do need to keep an eye on changes in the EU.